Capricorn. There's a reason you've always felt slightly out of place. Even in rooms full of people who loved you. Even when your life looked stable from the outside. Even when you had everything you were supposed to want. Because deep down, you knew. You were never meant to live an ordinary life. This isn't a motivational quote. This isn't spiritual fluff. This is a warning. A sacred one. A final one. You've been sensing something, haven't you? That subtle pull. That rising tension in your chest. That strange restlessness in your spirit that no logic can soothe. You try to sleep, but your dreams are loud. You try to move forward, but your steps feel heavy. That's not anxiety, Capricorn. That's memory. The memory of a signal God planted inside you a long time ago. Back when you were small. Back when you'd cry without knowing why. Back when you would pause, stare out the window, and feel something moving not outside, but within. That was the first whisper. And now, it's no longer whispering. It's roaring. Not with fear, but with urgency. Because you've reached the threshold. A turning point. The moment where you must decide whether you will finally listen or repeat every painful cycle you were sent here to break. And make no mistake. God does not warn twice in the same way. If He's speaking again now, it means time is running out. So here's the truth. You are not watching this by accident. You were drawn here. By your own soul. By a message you've been avoiding for years, maybe decades. Because you weren't ready to hear it then. But you're ready now. Whether you feel it or not. Whether you believe it or not. Capricorn, this is not just a video. This is a mirror. And by the time we finish, you will see exactly why your pain, your silence, and even your fear were never random. They were messages. They were training. And now, the divine is calling you to remember. Before we continue, pause and comment below. I, Capricorn, remember the warning. I am ready to act. Because if you stay with me until the end, I'll show you the 5 spiritual signals that have always been guiding you and the one critical decision you must make now to change your path forever. Let's begin. Not with answers, but with the first sign, the one you were born with. Part 1, the first signal, sacred fear in childhood. What you called anxiety was actually divine intelligence. Capricorn, do you remember those nights? The ones where you woke up with your heart pounding, but nothing had happened. The house was quiet. No storm outside. No footsteps in the hallway. Just you, and a feeling you couldn't explain. You were just a child. But your soul wasn't. Because what you felt wasn't fear. It was the first language of God. And God, He doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes, He speaks in sensations. In trembling. In silence. In a knot in your stomach that shows up before the chaos ever does. And you, Capricorn, were trained in that language very early. Not because you were weak, but because you were chosen. Yes, chosen. Chosen not for comfort, but for clarity. Chosen not for a soft path, but a sacred one. A path that would require you to feel what others ignore. To sense danger before it had a name. To prepare for storms before they appeared. That fear you carried, the one you hid from your parents, your teachers, even your friends, was never just fear. It was divine preparation. A sacred signal, encoded in your body, that told you, pay attention. Something's coming. Don't let the world silence this knowing. But the world did try, didn't it? As you grew older, people called it overreacting. They said you were too sensitive, too serious, too dark. So, like many Capricorns, you locked it away. You buried the fear deep inside and replaced it with logic, control, ambition. But the signal never stopped. It just waited. And now, it's returned. In your chest. In your sleep. In the way your body tenses when someone walks in the room with fake energy. In the way your mind replays things you thought you'd forgotten. Capricorn, let me tell you something no one told you when you were young. That fear was not a flaw. It was a gift. A spiritual radar. An ancient inheritance. A sacred pulse that connected you to heaven before you ever had words for it. And today, if you're feeling it again, that pressure, that sense of anticipation, It's not anxiety, it's reactivation. The same fear that warned you as a child is warning you again now, because something is shifting. A chapter is closing, a new test is arriving, and God is reminding you, you were built for this. But there's something else you need to hear, something your inner child still needs permission to believe. You were never imagining it. You weren't crazy. You weren't weak. You were in tune with truth, with danger, with destiny. And now it's time to return to that sacred listening, because the world is loud, but God's voice is quiet, and only those who remember how to feel will hear him. Life lesson. Fear, when ignored, becomes anxiety, but fear, when honored, becomes intuition. And intuition, Capricorn, is how the divine speaks to those it trusts the most. So the next time that tightness returns, don't silence it. Sit with it. Ask it, what are you here to teach me? Because the first signal wasn't meant to scare you. It was meant to awaken you. Part 2, the second signal, the messenger who disappeared. The one person who left you a spiritual code. Capricorn, have you ever remembered someone for no reason? Someone who passed through your life only briefly, maybe a neighbor, a teacher, a stranger on a bus. Someone whose name you may not even recall, but whose presence stuck with you like a shadow that never left. They said something strange, or maybe they didn't say much at all, but there was something in their voice, their eyes, their timing, that felt off, but also oddly important. And then, just as quickly, they were gone. Capricorn, that person was not just passing by. They were placed on your path with precision. Because some of God's most important messages don't come through thunder or prophecy. They come through people. People who appear once, deliver something you won't understand at the time, and vanish. But what they leave behind is not a memory. It's a code, a seed, a piece of divine instruction that will only make sense when your soul is ready. And now you are. If you've been thinking about them recently, hearing their voice again in your head, remembering something they once told you that made no sense back then, it is not nostalgia. It is activation. You see, the divine doesn't waste moments. And those random encounters, they were never random. They were aligned. They carried the energy of the second signal, the spiritual reminder that you were being guided, even when you felt alone. But as life hardened you, as responsibility demanded you grow up faster than others, as you built walls to protect what was sacred inside, you may have forgotten. And yet, the memory lingers. Because when a soul like yours is marked, when your childhood was filled with messages you didn't understand, those messages don't die, they sleep. Until now. Capricorn, you are now being asked to remember, not just the pain, but the people. Not just the wounds, but the witnesses. That person, whoever they were, was a messenger, sent not to stay, but to stir something in you that would rise later. And that moment has arrived. So go back. Not with regret, but with awareness. Ask yourself, who gave you a phrase you couldn't shake? Who left a presence that never quite faded? Because the divine is trying to reconnect you to that moment. To bring full circle a conversation that didn't end, just paused. And now that you're ready, that message is calling again. It's not just memory, it's instruction. And what you choose to do with it next will shape the decision that's coming. Because what's approaching is not a test of logic. It's a test of memory, of soul, of whether you can finally hear what was always meant for you. Not in the sky, not in symbols, but in the words of a stranger who was actually a guide. Life lesson. The divine doesn't always speak through lightning. Sometimes, it speaks through people who appear once, say something that echoes for years, and disappear, leaving behind a truth only your future self could understand. If that voice is returning to you now, Capricorn, it means only one thing. The moment they prepared you for is here. Part 3, the sacred trial that almost broke you. What hurt you was meant to rebuild you. Capricorn, there was a moment in your past, You know the one I'm speaking of. You don't talk about it often. You barely allow yourself to think of it. But it shaped you. It left a scar so deep that even now, years later, your voice tightens when you speak near it. Your chest hardens. Your memory edits itself. Just to survive. Maybe it was a betrayal. Maybe it was abandonment. Maybe it was a loss that came without warning. Or a truth that shattered everything you thought was safe. Whatever it was, you thought it was the end. And in many ways, it was. The end of innocence. The end of belief. The end of trusting the world to hold you gently. But Capricorn, here's what no one told you. That moment wasn't your destruction. It was your preparation. Not in the way people throw around words like everything happens for a reason. No. What you went through was real. And it should not have happened. But since it did, the divine did something only the divine can do. It turned that agony into a forge. You didn't just survive that chapter. You were tempered in it. Your pain was not wasted. Your sleepless nights. Your silent cries. Your ache to be understood. They weren't ignored by the heavens. They were counted. They were used. They were transformed. And now, what you carry inside you, that depth, that silence, that almost terrifying ability to sense what others don't, is because of that trial. Capricorn, you are not fragile. You are not broken. You are not too cold. You are the result of sacred fire. And that fire did not burn you to destroy you. It burned away everything that was not meant to stay. So when you look back at that moment, don't look at it with shame. Look at it with reverence. Because that was the day your mission was sealed. That was the day heaven said, if they can survive this, they can carry something few others can. But let me be clear. The pain wasn't holy. What you did with it was. You turned it into resilience. You turned it into wisdom. You turned it into compassion. Even when no one knew. And now, the divine is reminding you. You're going to need that strength again. But this time, not just to survive. To lead. To guide yourself through a new chapter. With your old wounds now transformed into tools. That's why you've been feeling the past return. That's why the ache has resurfaced. Not to haunt you. To remind you what you're made of. Because what's coming requires all of you. Not just the strong parts. Not just the healed parts. But even the broken ones. Especially the broken ones. Life lesson. The greatest mistake we make after surviving pain is pretending it didn't change us. But your transformation, Capricorn, is not a scar to hide. It is your proof. Proof that the sacred doesn't always look beautiful. Sometimes, it looks like survival. But survival is holy too. And if that trial hadn't happened, you would not be the soul you are now. You were not broken. You were reborn. Part 4, The Flood of Memory, a sign that everything is aligning. Why you're suddenly remembering everything. Capricorn. Lately, the past has been knocking louder, hasn't it? You'll be standing in the kitchen. And suddenly, a moment from 10 years ago flashes in your mind. You hear a voice you haven't heard in ages. You smell a place you haven't been to in decades. You remember a conversation you thought you forgot. And it comes with no warning. Not a memory you were reaching for. Not something you wanted to recall. But there it is. Alive. Uninvited. Vivid. You may have dismissed it at first. Chalked it up to nostalgia or a tired mind. But Capricorn, listen closely. These aren't random flashbacks. They are spiritual signals. When memories start to return this forcefully, especially the ones you never meant to revisit, it's because your soul is aligning with something it already saw long ago. You're not losing focus. You're waking up. You see, Capricorn, your soul was given visions long before you had the language to describe them. And now, as you stand at the threshold of a decision that will change everything, the divine is reactivating those visions. Through memory. Not just to reflect, but to prepare. Because what you've lived through, the people, the places, the heartbreaks, the lessons, weren't just experiences. They were codes. And now those codes are coming back online. That strange déjà vu you've been feeling, it's not a coincidence. It's your soul whispering. We've been here before. Not physically, spiritually. You've already walked this path in the unseen. You've already trained for what's coming. But now your mind must catch up to what your spirit already knows. So don't ignore the flashbacks. Don't push the memories away. Don't be afraid of the places your mind is revisiting. Because something in those memories, a face, a sentence, a feeling, contains a key for what's about to unfold. And if you rush past them, if you treat them like distractions, you may miss the message hidden in the memory. Capricorn, your soul has a map, but it was written in feelings, not in words. And those feelings are stored in memory. So now is not the time to numb yourself. It is the time to remember, to feel fully, to let the past rise, not to haunt, but to guide. Because this time, what you do with those memories will determine the shape of your future. Life lesson. Most people think remembering is about pain, but true remembering is about alignment. Capricorn, if old memories are returning, it's not to break you, it's to show you that everything, even the things you thought were meaningless, were part of a design, and now that design is becoming visible. You're not being dragged into the past. You're being shown how to step into your future, with full awareness of who you are. Part 5, the decision you were always destined to make. Why fear is delaying what you already know you must do. Capricorn, there's a decision pressing on your spirit right now. You've felt it building for weeks, maybe months. It sits in your chest like a quiet weight. It whispers in moments of silence. It lingers behind every what if and should I stay. You've analyzed it from every angle. You've made pros and cons lists. You've prayed. You've stalled. You've told yourself the timing isn't right. But the truth is, you already know what to do. You've known for a long time, not with your mind, but with your soul. And that knowing didn't come from logic. It came from God. He's already shown you what's no longer aligned. He's already removed your peace in the places where you're no longer meant to stay. He's already stirred your dreams, your body, your intuition. But still, you hesitate. Not because you're unsure, but because you're scared. Scared of the unknown. Scared of what you might lose. Scared that if you choose wrong, you'll never recover. And yet, Capricorn, the real danger is not in making the wrong decision. It's in ignoring the one your soul already made. Because once the soul decides, anything less becomes suffering. Capricorn, how many times have you asked for a sign? The truth is, you didn't get one. You got 5. And they all led you here. This moment isn't just about a choice in your outer life. It's about whether you'll finally choose yourself, your calling, your inner truth, your alignment. This isn't just about a job, or a relationship, or a city. It's about frequency. What kind of life are you willing to live? One that pleases others? Or one that finally honors who you truly are? The signs won't get louder. The clarity won't become more perfect. Because the divine already did its part. The rest is up to you. Capricorn, you've always been the one to hold everything together. To stay strong, even when unraveling. But this moment asks something different from you. It doesn't ask for strength. It asks for surrender. Surrender to what your soul already knows. Surrender to the path you've avoided. Surrender to the transformation you can't delay any longer. And if you're still unsure, let me offer this. The longer you wait, the heavier it will become. And one day soon, if you refuse to act, the choice will be made for you, not by fate, but by the consequences of ignoring your truth. Life lesson. Waiting for perfect clarity is how most people stay stuck forever. Capricorn, you already have the clarity. It lives in your body, in your resistance, in your restlessness, in the moments where your soul says, "This is not it." And now, the only question left is, will you listen or will you delay until life forces your hand? Because either way, a decision will be made. Part 6, the repetition. The warning is now louder than ever. Why this same pattern keeps coming back to you? Capricorn, let me ask you something quietly. Have you noticed how certain situations in your life keep repeating? Different people, different places, different years. But somehow, it feels like you've lived this before. You meet someone new, but the pain they cause is familiar. You start a job with hope, only to face the same exhaustion. You try to build something stable, only for the foundation to crack in the exact same place. And you wonder, why does this keep happening to me? The answer is simple and sacred. Because you ignored the signal the first time, and the second, and maybe even the third. Capricorn, your life is not cursed. You are not doomed to repeat. But your soul refuses to move forward without mastering what it was sent to learn. And when the divine sends a warning, a subtle nudge, a red flag, a gut feeling, a sleepless night, and you override it with logic, with practicality, with fear, then the universe doesn't punish you. It simply repeats the message, this time louder, and louder, and louder, until you listen. That's why you're seeing these patterns resurface. Not to torment you, to free you. You see, every cycle you're caught in, emotionally, spiritually, financially, is a doorway in disguise. But it won't open until you stop walking in circles. Capricorn, your strength has always been in your endurance. You push through, you survive, you rebuild. But this moment isn't about rebuilding. It's about breaking the loop, breaking the agreement you made with pain, breaking the silence between you and God. Because the divine is not just asking you to notice the pattern, it's asking you to name it. And once named, to end it. You don't need another lesson. You need permission. Permission to say, no more. No more relationships that mirror the wounds of childhood. No more workplaces that drain your purpose. No more pretending you don't feel what your soul already knows. The truth is, you've had enough clarity for a long time. But clarity without action becomes suffering. So here's what you need to understand. This repetition is mercy, not punishment. Because it means the door is still open. But if you wait too long, if you pretend not to hear it again, the cycle may not return. Not because you're free from it, but because you've made it permanent. And Capricorn, you didn't come here to live in loops. You came here to break generational silence, to rewrite karmic contracts, to walk paths no one before you dared to take. But none of that is possible if you stay in the cycle that's already expired. Life lesson. Patterns persist not because you're blind, but because you're afraid to disrupt what feels familiar. But Capricorn, safety is not the same as alignment. And if something is repeating now, a person, a wound, a challenge, it's only doing so because the divine is giving you one last chance to choose differently. And if you're brave enough to choose differently, the pattern ends with you. Part 7, The Internal War, Logic versus the Divine Voice. What happens when you keep choosing the rational over the spiritual? Capricorn, there's a war happening inside you right now. A quiet war that no one sees. On one side, your logic. Refined, intelligent, sharp, built from years of experience, survival, structure, and control. And on the other side, a voice. Subtle, soft, unreasonable by all external standards, but relentless. You try to silence it with to-do lists. You try to drown it in responsibility. You try to dismiss it with phrases like, "This doesn't make sense," or "There's no evidence." But the voice keeps returning, and every time it does, it gets harder to ignore. That voice isn't there to confuse you. It's there to redirect you. Because Capricorn, while logic may keep you safe, only spirit will set you free. And the truth is, you already know which one is right. You've just been trained to doubt it. From a young age, you were told, be strong, be smart, be sensible. Don't dream too big. Don't trust what can't be proven. Don't follow feelings, they're dangerous. And so, like many Capricorns, you became masterful at reason. You built your world on facts, on control, on what can be measured and managed. But now, your logic is failing you. Not because it's wrong, but because you've outgrown the chapter it was meant to serve. This next chapter, it's spiritual, it's energetic, it's intuitive, and that means the tools that once kept you safe can no longer take you where you're meant to go. That's why you feel stuck. That's why no decision feels right anymore. Because your soul is asking you to choose with a different compass now. A sacred one. The voice you've been silencing isn't chaos. It's clarity. The strange feelings that logic can't explain. The ones that show up when you're around the wrong person, or about to say yes to the wrong thing. Those are divine alerts. Capricorn, your inner conflict isn't a flaw. It's a sign of transition. It means the world you built with logic is now being asked to bow to a higher order. One that doesn't require evidence, only trust. And yes, that's terrifying. Especially for someone like you, who's worked so hard to build certainty, to earn respect, to be reliable, to never fail. But here's the paradox. If you keep choosing logic in a moment that requires faith, you will fail anyway. Not in the eyes of others, but in the eyes of your own soul. Because logic protects comfort, but faith leads to purpose. And you weren't sent here to live a comfortable life. You were sent here to remember your divine design, and then to walk it, even when no one understands. Life lesson. When logic becomes a prison, intuition becomes the key. Capricorn, you're not being asked to abandon your intelligence. You're being asked to expand it, to include the invisible, the mystical, the holy. And if you finally trust that small, persistent voice, the one that defies your plans but aligns with your purpose, then everything you've been trying to build will come together in ways logic could never design. Because God never needed you to understand first. He only needed you to say yes. Part 8, the sacred door. You are standing at the threshold. This is the final moment before everything changes. Capricorn, you've arrived at the edge. Not metaphorically, not someday. Now. This is it. The invisible line between what was and what will be. The moment when your soul is fully awake, and there is no turning back. You may not feel ready. You may still be wrestling with fear, with doubt, with the weight of what this decision could cost you. But ready or not, the door has opened. And what stands on the other side is not just a new chapter. It's a new frequency. A new version of you. But here's the truth most never tell you. Sacred doors don't stay open forever. They appear when you've done the work. When the signs have been delivered. When the patterns have repeated long enough. When your resistance has been exhausted. And your soul whispers, now. And this door, it isn't made of wood or steel. It's made of alignment. It opens only when you stop negotiating with your fear and start listening to your truth. And right now, you are standing in the doorway, but you haven't stepped through. Why? Because stepping through means letting go. Letting go of the false security you built to survive. Letting go of who you thought you had to be. Letting go of every version of you that was acceptable to others but unbearable to your soul. Capricorn, you've spent your entire life preparing for this moment. That's why the pain was so specific. That's why the warnings were so personal. Because this choice, this doorway, was never meant to be easy. It was meant to be sacred. And what makes something sacred is not how beautiful it looks, but how much you're willing to leave behind to pass through it. So I ask you, what are you still holding on to? An identity that no longer fits? A relationship that drains your light? A belief that keeps you small? Because if you carry all of that through the door will close. This is not punishment. It's spiritual precision. Because this doorway was built for the you who remembers who they are, not the version you became to survive. Capricorn, if you felt like your world is shaking lately, if everything stable has become unstable, if people are leaving, if plans are failing, if nothing is making sense anymore, good. That means the door is real. That means the alignment is working. That means the old world is breaking, so that the new one can begin. But only you can step forward. No one will push you. No one will drag you. And if you walk away, no one will stop you. But your soul will know. It always knows. And if you don't walk through now, you will return to the cycle. One more time, only heavier. Because the truth is, you're not being tested anymore. You're being called. Life lesson. Sacred doors don't ask for perfection. They ask for honesty. Capricorn, what your soul wants now is not clarity, but courage. Because clarity comes after the leap, not before it. And if you dare to step through that invisible door, not with certainty, but with obedience to your inner knowing, then everything that's been delayed, everything that's been denied, everything that's been waiting for the real you, will rush in. But only if you walk through. Not next week. Not next year. Now. Part 9, Conclusion. The Divine Awakening. When you finally listen, the prophecy begins. Capricorn, you've heard the signs. You've felt them in your body. You've watched them repeat in your relationships, in your memories, in your dreams. You've remembered what you were trained to forget. You've returned to the fear that once made no sense, only to realize it was divine preparation. You've reconnected with the messenger, the memory, the moment that never left you. And now, here you are. No longer the same person who began this journey. Because now you know. You were never lost. You were being led. Led through silence. Led through hardship. Led through fire that didn't destroy you. It revealed you. Capricorn, your life has never been random. Not a single tear was wasted. Not a single disappointment was in vain. Every moment has been coded, marked, aligned. For this. This is the moment when the prophecy begins. Not because something magical happens in the sky, but because something sacred happens inside you. You decide. You decide to stop ignoring the whispers. You decide to stop delaying what your soul already knows. You decide to say, yes, I hear you now. And that, Capricorn, is when everything changes. Not just externally, but internally. Because once a soul listens, once it surrenders to the divine guidance that's been knocking for years, doors open, cycles close, and clarity pours in like light through a crack in a wall you didn't even know you built. This is your crack. This is your light. But the choice, still yours. You can close this message and return to the loop. Ignore the tightness. Dismiss the dreams. Call it coincidence. Pretend it wasn't real. Or, you can answer the call. You can say, I, Capricorn, choose from the soul and I step forward. Because when a Capricorn wakes up, when a Capricorn truly listens, when a Capricorn aligns their will with their divine path, nothing in this world can stop what comes next. Not fear, not resistance, not history, not even chaos. Because chaos only comes when you ignore what was always meant for you. And order, sacred, divine, irreversible order, arrives the moment you say yes. So here's the final truth. The warning was never to scare you. It was to wake you up. And now that you're awake, you are unstoppable. Final call to action. If this spoke to you, if it stirred something you didn't even have words for, then write this in the comments below. I, Capricorn, hear the signs. I choose from the soul. I answer the call. And if you haven't already, subscribe now to Zodiac Secrets Revealed. Because this is just the beginning. Your soul knew the path before you ever saw the road. And now that you see it, walk it.